like do dances.
Subscribe.
Wow, Steve Dayton.
Hey guys, welcome to our channel.
That is, all right, we have our first cut. Mark, Nick, cut this right here. Okay, Steve, you have been in media in some way or another for how long?
Ooh, I've been in television production, media production for, I'd say 20 years now.
20 years?
No. Yeah, 20 years. Let's go with that.
Yeah, so you started at 8 when you were 20.
Yep.
There
Right
you
about
go.
that time.
You were telling us a story that if you could just, like it began, you texted me the other day.
Yeah, I hear you think QR codes on TV are stupid, or at least you did.
Well, let me go back a little bit further. I remember, I would say 5 years ago, my boss said, "Hey, look at these things. They're called QR codes, and you can make them. They're going to be everywhere." And I was like, "Okay, that's cool." And then they kind of died off. And then recently, someone was like, "Hey, we got to start putting QR codes on our videos. Like, this is something that people are doing." And I was like, I don't think that's how it's working anymore. Like, I don't see people taking that action. It's one more step that people have to do while they're watching video. I think people are lazy and they're just not going to do it. And so I was like, I think I'm pretty hip to this.
I can totally understand why you would think that too. I mean, 5 years ago, you needed a card, you needed a special reader, and you had to go find that app and then take it out, make sure you scanned. Like, as someone who's been plugged into that TV thing for so long, like knowing that all those steps are complicated is something you don't want the viewer to do. Carry on.
Right. And that's exactly right. If I start talking without really even looking into it at all, it's just about how I felt, which is a terrible place to speak from. And right away, like a 50-year-old guy said, "I actually scanned a code last week off of an ad." I was like, he was like, "I think it was a contest." I was like, "Okay, that makes sense." I'm like, "But that's an outlier." And then I went home and I was telling my wife about this discussion, and I was like, "Yeah, these codes, and they want to put them on TV, but I don't think it's going to work." And she's like, "Well, I've actually done that before." And I'm like, "What do you mean you've done that before?" She's like, "Yeah, it was like a shopping thing where I scanned it on TV." And I was like, "All right, maybe I literally said, I think maybe I'm a dinosaur and I totally just had this go over my head. I don't know. I don't know how I missed the ship on this."
No, it's not a dinosaur thing. Like, it didn't make sense a few years ago. Like, it wouldn't have made any sense. But here we are now in 2022. I always want to say 2020 because it feels like we're still in a parallel universe of it. iOS built in the camera to the built in the app feature to the camera, so you can just hold it up and click on it. Android, I think, is mostly there now. Not all their phones, but a lot of them do that.
Well, that was the first thing for me. That was the first thing for me is I was like, I don't even have a QR code reader on my phone anymore. And somebody was like, "Well, your camera app." I was like, "Oh, okay."
It's like, oh, well, there you go. Well, I mean, I think that's like the craziest thing, isn't it? It's like we have the argument about, whether or not the world is ready for it. And like, we can talk about the Super Bowl we'll talk about the Super Bowl, but like, even before that, with iOS updating not only to read codes, but then again recently to like show you the scan destination, like as you're in progress of scanning it, it's like it feels like even the tech that we're using every day is kind of adapted a little bit. But now it's like, well, is awareness there to kind of support it? And then the Super Bowl happened, and now the answer is yes.
You like are being a little bit self-deprecating. you also reached out to me, who is obsessed with QR codes on TV, and you're asking about like functionality and how you do the stuff. What questions can we answer for you as someone who maybe sees the value, saw that there was codes in the Super Bowl, but like, what questions does a normal person who's trying to get creative on the air think of when it comes to QR codes on broadcast?
I think my first thought was, can we just put a QR code on any commercial and it's going to work? And I think that's not the answer. I think that the whole commercial has to be based around, the whole creative concept has to include the QR code in it. It has to have a strong call to action. So the viewer has to get something from clicking on it. It's not just like, hey, click on this and you go to this web page. It needs to be a strong call to action so that the viewer is going to take their time and do it. And then the other thing is, the original thing that worried me was the size. If you're requiring people to get up and walk to the TV, they're not going to do it. But can they scan from their couch? Can they scan from their chair? And those were some of my initial questions.
I think those are like good starting questions too. I feel like those are like the universal ones.
Megan, you want to tell them about scan education?
Short answer. You could realistically take any existing video and add a flow code to it. And we've definitely seen people have a lot of success with that. I think one thing that Flowcode offers from a QR standpoint is like, just from the fact that we are very design forward, they generally tend to perform pretty well and pop off the page and attract attention from potential scanners, just based on how they look in general. So we've definitely seen that Flowcode in existing video can work pretty well. But that said, you are absolutely right that if it's possible to, actually have that call to action built into your spot, have the voiceover say, scan the flow code, explicitly state what the value exchange is, right? So scan the flow code and get X instead of, relying on people to just know what to do. We know with marketing in general, right? You have to be pretty explicit with what you want your viewers to actually do. So we often prefer to hear it in the actual voiceover. And then obviously, like graphically, there are a ton of options in terms of like scan education, right? So, you could just rely on the voiceover and get good results, but then oftentimes having the voiceover plus something that actually, you might use a flow code that has something that says open, aim, tap on it and get incrementally better results, kind of the more clear that you make it. And there are a lot of things to consider in terms of like time on screen and all of that. The long and short of it is the longer the code is on screen, the better. So your creative should realistically give you the opportunity to have that code up there as long as possible. All of that said, there are a lot of kind of factors that play into it, like frequency and where does that video live and all of those things. So the long and short of it, very easy, but Flowcode definitely has some best practices to make video super scannable. And kind of the extra added layer to that is that we're specifically designed to be scannable in a TV environment. So what we would say is like, yes, pretty much any video can be outfitted with a flow code, but not any video can be outfitted with any QR, right? Like Flowcode is specifically designed to be in that TV environment, to be scannable from a distance. We have a lot of kind of proprietary tech that goes into the actual design and science behind that code that factors in things like sight, sound, and motion. We're obviously looking at things like lighting and screen resolution. And then even like we say, from the distance element, we've done a lot in terms of understanding code size on screen size. And then also things like, increasing the size of the actual data pattern and sometimes the density of the data, which are all the dots in the code itself that are actually being picked up by the screen reader. So, there's a lot that goes into actually having codes that are going to scan every time, and Flowcode's process is a little bit more rigorous than anything else that we've seen in the market in terms of actually being scannable from anywhere. And so like part of the deal is that like it is extremely easy to Flowcode creative. And it sounds super, super complicated, but Flowcode does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of tech to make it work for you.
If we could step though out like backwards from, there's a lot of really awesome things about why like Flowcode on TV works, you know, the best. Like we could go off on it for a while, but Steve, what are the most fun commercials to work on? Car sales, image, holiday, like what are the most fun ads you've got to create over the last 20 years?
I think it's branding spots.
So
Speaking
like
of that method, yeah.
I would put branding in the image category. Like, here's what we're all about. Here's what we do and why we do it. Usually there's like, you know, the one message you're trying to get across in one of those branding spots. What I love about putting codes into spots is that it only really works if you have to only focus on the one thing. What can I give people that they can use? Now my spot has to be about that. So it almost is like all the spots that I've got to do over the last year become branding spots because you can't gum them up with a ton of text. You can't, like there's all of these, I'll put quotes on rules, but like I can make a pretty spot that has a circle next to it and get people to go somewhere else and like dive into that brand pool. And a little bit of me is like, get people to see all the other stuff that aren't just my commercial. So like,
Right.
as I talk to a creative guy who's good at creatively motivating people, like that's the thing that I found super cool about these. That, and no one could tell me that my spots didn't work.
So I think that's the thing, right? Like not to like jump in and overlap, but like if you are a creative person, I've never been the creative person, I've been the data person, right? And the measurement side of it. And I think the thing that's like really incredible is being able to like real time understand whether or not that message is actually resonating. And then like further than that, when it does, it gives the viewer the ability to take it with them, or like otherwise, like Nick said, like explore more of what they like. And I think that that's kind of the key about it, is that it puts creators in a position to like earn that interaction, to really like get people to sit forward. And then, you know, you put the ball in the viewer's court and they pick and choose. And I don't know, I just think there's really something exciting about that value exchange even by itself.
What I was going to add on to what you guys are talking about is the constraints of television commercials, is that we're based in 15 to 30 second commercials. If you have a longer story to tell, I'm excited to be able to engage people to
so you're saying engage people and whatever. I'm saying hijack the whole commercial. Like you're the first spot and you have a QR code in a break, steal the value from those other minute and 30 people, because you can get them to go here.
Yeah.
I don't have a smart follow-up to that. If you can get them to go here.
Well, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the second something catches my eye on my phone, I'm gone forever. That's it, down that rabbit hole. So that's it. Like, and that's, you know, you have good quality creative. And I love Flowcode's ability to do like cliffhanger creative, right? So like you have that awesome teaser that's like a 15 or a 30. You get good enough frequency with your 15 and people are scanning into it. And then you tell the rest of the story via whatever's on the other side of that scan. I don't know, get your hooks in. I love that.
I'm just excited to see where this ends up. A year from now, after next Super Bowl, are we going to still be talking about QR code, like how effective, or who's doing the best creative around QR codes?
But we're not going to call them QR codes anymore. They're going to be flow codes next year.
Flow codes.
Let me ask you this. Did you scan the code in the Super Bowl?
I did.
did you get the full site visit or did it crash?
I got the full site visit, so but I didn't sign up. I didn't get my free $15 of Bitcoin.
Interesting.
Either.
I didn't sign up. Well, so I was on a plane during the Super Bowl. So the first time I scanned it, it was on a desktop computer. So I really definitely did not have the whole experience. But I can tell you that I started screaming internally, but you know, just the feeling of like, oh my God, it's happening.
I picked up my computer and I left the room. I'm like, damn it.
Well, I was in the kitchen and somebody had said, "What is going on?" And then I walked back into the living room, saw it, went back to the kitchen table, grabbed my phone, came back. I was like, all right, I don't know if I'm even going to make it. And I still was able to scan it. So
21 million people, 21 million people. And like, here's the thing too, like, you have to imagine that if you're a brand who can spend money in the Super Bowl, right? And you have to imagine that you see some kind of brand lift from such a large marketing event like that, right? Like, you know, it's freaking Toyota runs a spot and they're like, oh yeah, we sold a few more Toyotas, right? Like you'd have to imagine that after a certain amount of time, they'd be able to see the result. But like, when has it ever been like instant, right? Like getting those scan metrics back and understanding exactly how many people downloaded that app, how many people redeemed the offer, and knowing it instantly. The idea of being able to kind of close the loop on all of your marketing questions just through the use of Flowcode and that direct connection, I think is pretty wild, or like QR in general, I guess. But like we said, we only care about Flowcode.
Because it's the
do you
safe.
think Super Bowl
What?
I was doing an advertisement and Steve was having a genuine conversation. Let's go with what Steve was saying.
Do you think that Super Bowl ads will be more expensive next year because it's shown that it is effective?
That is a great question. Well, you have to imagine that now, so like based on what we're seeing is now there's a whole lot of interest around QR from everybody from production houses to TV companies to, you know, the brands themselves. Everybody's kind of looking at QR going, how do I do this? And so it definitely makes me wonder if like, is this going to be kind of like standard offerings for commercial production now? Is this a new way of kind of charging for creative, charging for measurement, all of this? You know, we talk all the time about Flowcode kind of changing the currency, the way that we measure media, the way that we do media. Like, I wonder if it does impact everything about media buying, if it's this new amazing creative tool that also suddenly lets you understand your results real time. I don't know. That's a very compelling question.
You want to, wait, are we done? Do you guys want to keep going?
I could talk about Flowcode literally for hours and hours and hours. So
okay.
Well, let me ask you this one more question and I brought this up to Nick yesterday, my other worry is it's going to become so oversaturated that the viewer is just going to become desensitized to flow codes, QR codes.
I think you're the second person that said that today. So can I give my theory on that? It goes back to, because Flowcode is not the hero. Flowcode is not the thing that people are responding to. People are responding to the message. And so what I like and what I am excited to see is, so, and even taking a step back, so before I was working for Flowcode, I was working at a TV station, putting Flowcode on TV. And the more that we did it, the more audiences scanned and the more consistently they scanned. And so what that said to me was, if I keep doing this, they're going to understand it and the value exchange has to be there. And so I think with this new layer of like interactivity and this new awareness around QR, especially in TV, I think rather than things like being blind to QR or feeling negative about the presence of it, it's more that it, like, brands and publishers are suddenly going to have to, like we said, earn that viewership more. So I almost think that like right now what we see behavior trending is an increased adoption of QR, and that the people who are actually creating that messaging now have to like really earn that engagement. And so instead of, I think we're kind of flipping it on its head, where instead of, you know, people being turned off by it, it's such a sit forward, opted in option for those viewers that I kind of see almost the opposite thing happening.
So, I mean, I think that you guys are, I mean, Steve, you're not arguing that it changes it, but you're asking, does this? I think there will be a ton of bad commercials with crummy QR executions that prove the rule. Like, oh, you put that up and you have $40,000 of grips against it and no one scanned. Okay, well, maybe your commercial sucks. Like maybe you weren't giving them something that they wanted to scan for. Are you just saying, oh, we have a QR code, so scan here? Or are we doing what, like you were saying, Steve, which is build a spot around getting people to get to that place where we own the connection and we can retarget and do all the things that we do as marketers to try and keep them in the fold. But it's still going to be on the job of the creators, not the creator, the people tailoring the messages. Some of them are still going to not land. But I think people who are thinking like you, Stefan.
Guess we got to
People
fight
who are
now.
thinking like you, Stefan, they are going to be gangbusters crazy in new ROI and tactical. I ran out of words. I was going to say people who are thinking like you though are they're going to do okay. Circle back, put a pin in it.
I'm so guilty of saying all of those things.
Steve, you promoting any events? Got anything big going on in your life? You've made it through the wings of death. This camera, this camera, this camera. Tell the world what you got going on.